Chapter 5. Tomorrow's Inner Child Will Save the World. With all this talk of freedom and enslavement, it would be short-sighted not to call attention to the abysmal, albeit improving, relationship between children and adults. There is a great mystery surrounding why adults are often bitter and hostile, even though we raise children like wild beasts to be tamed or slaves to be controlled. It should come as no surprise that these children eventually become adults who emulate this attitude of domination and spend their lives attempting to tame and control the external world. The bond between parent and child is one of the strongest human relationships, and children have learned valuable life lessons from their families since the beginning of time. Because of this, many authoritarian societies have guided the structure of the family to mold future generations, even before those generations could enter the indoctrination centers we have come to know as public education. The establishment's most effective form of propaganda is the ability to impose their values on young impressionable children through their parents. Using the methods of propaganda that exist via the media, education systems, and religious institutions, the establishment has created a society where authoritarianism and domination is a part of everyday life. When parents raise their children, they draw from a lifetime of propaganda and feel a great sense of guilt when their child doesn't accept the established norms in society. Children are free and full of spirit. Parents often forget what it's like to be a child and simply don't understand. Their oppressive culture and its abhorrent values have brought them so far away from their spirit that they feel something is wrong if their child does not conform to the establishment's ideals. This causes parents to be authoritative with their children to encourage conformity. What they are really doing is breaking their children's spirit and preparing them to live in an oppressive world and accept authority. Parents take this aggressive route due to the example that has been set by the established control systems. In our society, it is commonplace for authority figures to be controlling and closed-minded. Therefore, people tend to behave in the same fashion when they fall into a position of authority themselves. Many good people, who only want the best for their families, put themselves and their children through a lot of pain and turmoil because they believe their child must live a certain way in order to obtain happiness. All of this stress and oppression is often carried out with the best of intentions, but it is with corrupted perceptions that parents are projecting society's ideals onto their children. Today's parents aren't passing earthly knowledge and wisdom to their children, but are instead passing down a long list of cultural assumptions, idiosyncrasies, and misconceptions. They are passing along the aggressive, materialistic message of the aristocracy, which has been instilled in them through years of propaganda and indoctrination. Even worse is the fact that these false values are instilled through constant emotional and sometimes physical abuse. This has resulted in a situation where many children have been psychologically abused. If almost everyone's childhood is like this, is it any surprise that most of the adults in our society behave in such irrational ways? As the empire's facade crumbles and the middle class disappears, it is important that we don't instill the same set of values in future generations, or we will be doomed to repeat this cycle of dominance and propaganda yet again. We should be protecting our children from the toxic culture that surrounds us instead of forcing them to conform to it. The values that drive our culture are the reason for a great deal of suffering across the world. These values not only have a detrimental personal impact, but also lead other human beings to project the same oppressive predator energy that is destroying our planet and species. For the most part, every generation treats their children with just a little bit more respect than they received from their parents, and this has been especially the case since the 20th century. Physical child abuse, infanticide, and child slavery have been extremely common throughout history. However, in the past century, society has become more conscious of the value of human life, and those horrors are much less common. Physical child abuse still takes place today, but it is more isolated due to the fear of legal punishment and its recent taboo nature. However, there is still a great deal of emotional and psychological abuse that is dished out to most children, even by the most well-intentioned adults. Children are a minority group who remain second-class citizens in the eyes of most of the world. Their actions are scrutinized, their opinions are ignored, and their existence is seen as not much more than a burden. Many adults fear and envy children even if they don't realize it. This is because the child is a free spirit that represents change, which the adult has been trained to fear. They suppress their fear by attempting to tame and train the child, just as they themselves were tamed and trained. This taming process is extremely confusing and traumatizing for the child, but unfortunately, most parents feel it is their duty to mold their child to obey authority. Not many have questioned the morality or efficiency of this parenting strategy, but it is a question of extreme importance. Our children are the future of this world, and if they are not treated with respect and given freedom, there will never be freedom or respect in our societies. That's not to say that children should be allowed to do whatever they want, but it means that they should not be treated like animals to be trained and controlled. Our goal here is not to criticize anyone who uses a, quote, mainstream parenting strategy. Rather, we want to stress the significance of how we treat children and how that is directly related to the kind of adults we see in our society. There is an old adage that says, "The hand that rocks the cradle rules the world," which is why it is so important to reevaluate how we treat young people. Our children are the future of this world, and if they are not treated with respect and given freedom, there will never be freedom or respect in our civilization. In the context of spirituality and social philosophy, it is important to allow a child to choose their own path. Parents can and should teach their children all they know, but at no point should they express disappointment if their child wants to explore other social or spiritual philosophies. Throughout the course of our lives, we develop baggage from various environments we encounter. We come into this world as pure souls with a clean slate, and as we grow, we adopt various beliefs and idiosyncrasies from our culture, which eventually manifest as our personal identities. Whether it is race, class, occupation, or belief structure, people identify with cultural labels and use those labels to build their personal model of reality. Children see the natural world with a clearer perspective because their perception is not yet clouded by cultural conventions and other prejudices. This is why concepts like money, time, and authority make no sense to children, and rightfully so. These are all man-made cultural abstractions. Youth are typically condemned in authoritarian societies because they have not been corrupted and molded into obedient, mechanized citizens. If the youth of any oppressive nation were given freedom to grow without being indoctrinated into the cultural control system, the whole system would change radically within a single generation. The establishment's stranglehold on the human race is unnatural, immoral, and insane, which is why their ideals are always met with resistance by the youth culture. The ruling class knows their only hope of maintaining political dominance is to vilify their citizens until they have been indoctrinated into the systems. In other words, until they grow up. However, the human mind is resilient, and many of us are able to slip into adulthood with minimal psychological corruption. This growing portion of society may not be popular, but they are very often the source of positive progress that has taken place throughout history. Some of the greatest minds to have walked the earth have recognized that the ideas of growing up and fitting in place people in invisible cultural prisons and corrupt their natural personal philosophies. One of the most brilliant thinkers of the last century, Albert Einstein, was one of these people. Einstein believed that imagination is much more important than knowledge, and that common sense is the collection of prejudices acquired by age 18. He was well aware of the cultural games being played with people's minds. When he was 16 years old, one of his school teachers told him he would never amount to anything because of his rebellious, unorthodox attitude. So this free-thinking revolutionary dropped out of school and immediately sought opportunities at universities of higher learning. Einstein went on to become one of the greatest scientists of all time and maintained his rebellious attitude throughout his entire life. Einstein was against war, elitism, and authority. Although it does appear he supported socialism, if it was not for his incredible contributions to science, he might have been considered insane or an enemy of the state by the establishment. When someone makes it out of childhood without being corrupted, they are usually called naive and told their unorthodox point of view isn't welcome in society. Many creative and rebellious people who are in touch with their inner child typically receive such negative feedback from family and friends that they knowingly submit to a culture which makes no sense to them. This is exactly why you have to be a certain age in order to run for office. The system makes sure to give people enough time to submit to the established cultural model of reality before they are able to have any impact at all on the direction of society. There are many cases where we do have much to learn from our elders, and it is true that skills we depend on for society have been passed down through the generations. However, when it comes to a government setting, cultural norms, we cannot deny the existence of an ulterior motive. That motive is always the same: to maintain control of the population and defend the power of the established institutions so they endure for the next generation. It is possible to learn and mature without, quote, growing up and limiting yourself with cultural prejudices. Being responsible, respectful, and peaceful is what makes you a mature adult. It has nothing to do with fitting into the established culture. There is also the importance of imagination, something that tends to have heightened potency within the minds of the youth. It is through imagination that we weave our dreams and intentions for the future. A powerful imagination and a relinquishing of fear and doubt can help one experience deep states of meditation and shamanic visioning that remain unavailable to the doubting mind that lacks the imagination needed for creative visualization and, ultimately, manifestation. If we allow our imagination, our thirst for knowledge, and our youthful passion to be extinguished, then we allow a piece of ourselves and of the human collective to be forgotten. By recognizing the importance of this passion and taking steps today to cultivate empowering relationships and experiences for future generations, we ensure a more peaceful tomorrow.